Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday to you. Okay, so let's start today with a few observations. So, first of all, become aware of what it is that you truly desire. And the reason why is because if we aren't clear on that, okay, you can notice that just very simply, you can notice that throughout the day, so you can just reflect on your experience, you notice that you have all kinds of desires, big desires, little desires. Sometimes you want to get towards something, sometimes you want to get away from something or someone. So you have all of these desires that come and go. And many of those desires are not really that important to you. But if you're not clear on what you really desire, then you'll be swayed by whatever desires enter, and whatever's up, right? So it's helpful to get clear and to have a prioritization. What is it really that matters to you? And that intention, that focus, helps to, you have all of this energy, an enormous amount of energy, but that energy is diffused, goes in all these different directions because of all these different desires. But if you have the clarity on this highest priority desire, what really matters, then that helps to focus the energy. So now it's like a laser. And maybe you have many desires that are important to you or that seem important to you. And so you say, well, I don't know if I can choose just one. I want you to imagine now, here's an image. There's a great river, like the Colorado River in the southwestern United States, cuts this enormous canyon, like the Great Canyon, okay? And so you've got this huge divide, and you want to bridge that. Okay, so this is your situation. You have this enormous divide that you want to bridge. And you said about beginning to build a bridge, and you work on that. And then you say, I think I don't really like this design. I'll do a different design. So you start over another bridge. I think I want it to be bigger than that one. Okay, start over, new one. I just don't have the right feeling for this one. Okay, start a new one. We see what happens. You never get a bridge. So we want to have a bridge. We want to bridge that divide. Why? Why do we want to bridge the divide? Because when we're perceiving ourselves to be, when we perceive that there's a divide, then we suffer. So you want to bridge the divide. You have a desire fundamentally to bridge the divide. Now that shows up in a million different ways, but prioritize, because if you don't prioritize and focus, you never have a completed bridge. You have a million partial bridges, and not a partial bridge doesn't do you any good. So what is the obstacle to you experiencing or having or knowing what it is that you need? And you might have an intellectual understanding that says, oh, I know I don't need anything. I know that I am oneness. I know that all is well. I know that that nothing ever happened. Yeah. Okay. What about 99% of your waking state? That's what I'm talking about. So we can bullshit. Bullshitting is a strategy to avoid building any bridge at all. Or we can just be really honest. Okay, a lot of the time I am struggling. A lot of the time I am confused. A lot of the time I am entranced. So right there's opportunity for clarity for what is my desire. My desire is to know my fundamental okayness always. So that's one possibility. But also, I want you to consider, be really honest. So maybe you say, well, I really want to know my fundamental okayness always, but kind of actually, I really just want to, I want to be free of this pain. And so you can be bullshitting yourself because you say, well, but I really just want to know my okayness all the time. But mostly I just want to be free of the pain. So if you're not telling the truth about what's really your priority, then you'll never be focused on that bridge. You'll always be distracted. So just tell the truth. Just be simple, like a child, without all of the pretense, without all of the so-called understanding, without all of the lofty ideals, without all of that. Just be innocent. And that will tell you clearly what is this priority. And then just let your focus be with that, so that is what all of the exploration facilitates. We have to have that focus. We have to have that clarity, or we just build a million partial bridges. So that's step one. Okay, step two, thing that I'd like to observe, it's related, we already kind of observed it, but I want you to notice that perhaps, hopefully, during these formal explorations, you experience repeatedly moments of clarity, expansiveness, peace, openness, light, purity. Okay. But observe just now in your recollection, what's happening throughout the rest of the day. So I want you to have, that's going to be the backdrop for our exploration today, so that we're going to be exploring with that as the context. The point being, what is it that we do a good portion of the day, and what is it that we do or don't do when we experience peace? And I want you to see how simple this is. Okay, it's very, very, very simple. It's simpler than you think. And when you see the simplicity of it, then it's about being truthful and remembering that and being willing to apply that in your life. Because if we, as we do, but if we come together a couple times a week, and maybe for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, who knows for how long, maybe just for 5 seconds, but you experience this bliss or openness or peace or clarity, that's really important. I mean, most people don't even recognize that they have those moments. So you recognize that, that's really powerful. And then we've got to see what is it that we're, in a sense, up against. Okay, so if you got, I don't know, 14, 16, 18 hours of waking state each day, and you get 5 minutes or 10 minutes of clarity, it's not a great ratio. So this is about seeing the simplicity of it so that it can be applied without strain throughout your waking state, throughout your life. Okay, so let's choose a posture that you can inhabit with confidence for the next little while. So ideally, this is a posture where you're not going to fall asleep, where you're not going to collapse, where you're not going to be numb, where you're going to feel as much as possible. And yet, we want that to be balanced with where you can also surrender as much as possible. So it's a fine line. It's ever shifting balance. So whatever that is in one moment, it will be different in another moment. So just be honest about what that is right now. So it could be lying down, could be sitting on the floor, could be sitting leaning against something, could be, who knows. Okay, but you find that. And then your aim is that you can be very still. So close the eyes, and we'll just take a moment and see how still can you be here. So stillness is just a word, okay? So that word may have different meanings for different people. So I want to clarify it. It doesn't mean being rigid. It doesn't mean forcefully maintaining non-movement. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to breathe. It doesn't mean your heart has to stop beating. It means being aware of the impulses to move, okay, the impulses to adjust, the impulses to fix, the impulses to do something, to get out of the discomfort, to get ahead, to figure it out, whatever drives you. Being aware of those impulses at a subtle level, and then subtler and subtler and subtler, and noticing that, first of all, you don't have to indulge them. And second of all, at a subtler level, you might start to notice that they start to dissolve. It starts to get blurry. It's not even clear, did the impulse even form? Certainly, it's at a more superficial level, it starts to be blurry as to whether or not you're actually indulging it or not. And then as that goes deeper and deeper, you might start to realize, I'm not sure that the impulse is even forming. There's a hint of it, but I'm not sure. So if you can do this kind of inquiry, then this is a good posture for you. If you're finding that you're overwhelmed by discomfort or strain or agitation or whatever, then it's possible that you need to bring the support to your body a little bit better. So eventually, through this kind of inquiry, what happens is we learn to surrender to the intrinsic support. So there is support here. The support is everywhere. The support is within. The support is absolutely reliable, and we can surrender deeply to that. So we surrender the physical strain, we surrender the mental strain, we surrender the emotional strain, we surrender all of that and find that we are supported. But that's a process. So we're all somewhere in that process. There's a spectrum. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's achieved perfection. So that's not a standard you need to hold for yourself. You don't need to be perfect. But you can just be honest and notice, can you do this kind of inquiry? Can you allow yourself to surrender more? Can you allow yourself to discover those subtler aspects or experiences or perceptions of the impulses? If so, great. You're in a good posture. If not, if you find that you're just straining and squeezing and uncomfortable and afraid or irritated, then see what you can do to give yourself better support. Bring the support to you. So that might mean you just need to change the posture, or maybe you need to put a cushion behind you, or maybe something along those lines. So just be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, be loving to yourself. This is not like a Zen monastery where I'm going to come around and whack you with a stick if you're not doing it right. It's much, much gentler. So you can let go, you can surrender. So hopefully you found a good posture. That doesn't mean that you're not experiencing anything. Of course you're experiencing things. So I'm experiencing things. I notice strain. So if you notice strain, it's not that you're doing it wrong, you're doing it correctly. It's not a question of have you successfully eliminated the strain? It's a question of can you be present to and surrender that strain? And then you'll discover deeper, subtler levels. So there's always something there. It's not about eliminating it. Remember, this is not about achieving perfection. This is about being present to the experience. It's about being honest. So you will have experience, there will be sensation. It's just a question of can you be present to it? Can you surrender? Bit by bit. So be aware of your body, be aware of the outer layer of your body, your skin. So you're aware that the skin surrounds your entire body. Having awareness of the skin, see if you can be aware of all of the skin all at once. So you could be aware of the skin on the scalp, and the skin on the toes, and the skin on the fronts of the knees, and the skin on the backs of the knees, and the skin on the fingers and between the fingers, and the skin on the wrists, and the skin on the elbows, and the skin under the arms, and the skin on the back, the skin on the neck, and the skin on the throat, and the skin on the chest, the skin on the forehead, and the skin behind the ears, and the skin that wraps all around the earlobes and goes all the way inside. So you're aware of all of this skin, and see if you can be aware of all of it at once. And then notice the inside of the body. So what's inside of the skin? So just feel the inside of the body. And inside the body, you'll notice that there are organs. So you can be aware of the liver. If you're not sure where the liver is, it's the upper right portion of the abdomen. You can be aware of the stomach and the small intestines and the large intestines and the lungs, both on the right side and the left side, and the kidneys on the right side and the left side and the back. And the heart and the brain. And then you can be aware of all of the soft tissue inside of the skin, muscles and fascia and all of the soft tissue inside. And then you can start to become aware of the bones. So the bones are the hardest part. They're the strongest part. They're what give us structure and what allow us to move and function. So actually we can allow the bones to do an enormous amount. And in particular, when we're at rest, as we are presently, at least to some degree, then we want the bones to take up most of the effort. So wherever there's strain, I want you to just be aware that you're taking up the effort in the soft tissue, and instead you can surrender that to the bones. Just know that the bones can carry that. The bones can do that. The bones don't need to work hard. They actually, just by their nature, it is their nature to support. So you can surrender to the bones, and you can feel the density and the heaviness of the body. And paradoxically, the more that you can feel the heaviness and the density of the body, the more that you can surrender and notice the buoyancy and the lightness. So it's okay for there to be density and heaviness. That density and heaviness is the earth. It is the bones. It's what allows us to be here and to function. And we can just surrender to that rather than straining against it. And the more that you surrender to it and allow for the bones to take the weight and heaviness, you will start to notice that simultaneously there is a buoyancy and a lightness. Now become aware of the breath. Notice, does the breath feel comfortable? Does the breath feel vitalizing? The chances are, at least to some degree, there's some part of or aspect of the breath that feels restricted, tense, effortful, unpleasant. So I want you to be aware of the breath like it really truly is, which is a gift. So it's a gift that's given to you. It's a gift that's given to me. We don't earn the breath. In fact, the harder we try, the more strained the breath becomes. So the more we try, the less we receive. But in reality, the breath is a gift that's given to us. If you try to stop the breath, you'll go unconscious, and then you'll begin breathing again. Because the breath is not something you are doing, the breath is gifted to you. The breath is by its nature vitalizing. It is healing by its very nature. So to the degree that the breath is, you do not experience the breath as a gift or as vitalizing or liberating, it's because of some effort that you're making, some attempt to control it. So forget for a moment, just consciously forget how to breathe. And that might seem like a funny statement because you might think, well, I'm not really conscious of how I'm breathing, which is probably true most of the time. But subconsciously, you have a way of breathing. Subconsciously, there's a habit of how to control the breath. And in order to forget that, you have to be aware. You have to be aware that you're doing it and then consciously choose to let it go. So this requires that you just tune into what's really happening. Notice how you attempt to gain control over the breath. And consciously choose to relinquish that. So one clue is wherever there seems to be restriction, discomfort, or you might experience it as a frustration, anger, some sort of emotional, you might have an emotional judgment or label. Just be aware of that and be aware of how you do it. So it's not conscious until you become conscious of it. It's a subconscious habit, but by being aware of it, you can become conscious of it. And by becoming conscious of it, you can consciously forget it, consciously inhibit, consciously release, consciously surrender. And you'll know that you're succeeding because you will feel better. Rather than straining against the restriction, you will find that something happens where there's an easing, a, a relaxation, a softening that occurs. So the experience of the breath, the shape of the breath, the model of the breath, the thoughts of the breath, all of these things have to be dissolved. You have to let them go so that you're first consciously becoming aware, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then consciously softening, letting it go so that it dissolves without you trying to overlay some new so-called better habit. You're just releasing the old dysfunctional habit and receiving the gift without knowing how. Just like a baby doesn't know how. And be aware of all of the subtleties. So notice if you become hyper focused on one thing, and just gently allow yourself to expand that awareness so that it's more inclusive. You'll start to notice the other parts and pieces of the pattern that hold it in place. So as you soften and release in one area, you'll start to notice, if you expand gently that awareness, that there are other aspects that come to light where you notice, oh yeah, there's this other piece, this other squeezing, this other trying, this other fear, this other hesitation, this other doubt, this other judgment. And that too you can surrender and release, and then allow that awareness to be expansive and inclusive, so you become aware of the next facet. So perhaps you notice now that it's as if you've been opened up. So of course sensation remains. It's not about getting rid of the sensation, but notice that that sensation is occurring in this spaciousness. Notice that you are more open, perhaps you also notice greater poise, greater balance, as if you can respond with presence to whatever arises rather than being locked into a struggle. Perhaps you notice less of a rush to judgment. Of course, there may be sensation that you still have judgment of, but it's as if there's more space there, allowing you to be present to it in an open way, not so sure that you know what it is and what your relationship to it is and what you need to do in order to fix it. So if you notice these things, then what's happening is that you are coming into touch with a subtler reality, your subtler nature. So ask yourself, who am I? Just notice when you ask yourself, who am I? Where do you look? What is noticing? What is looking? What is it that is sensing? And notice how effortless it is to do that looking, to have that recognition. Now, this can't be named or labeled or put into a box. You can't understand it, but you know that you are. And this sense of yourself, notice that this fundamental sense of yourself, even though your experience now is more open, notice that this fundamental sense of yourself is a constant. It remains. So this is the same even when you are stressed. It's the same self. It's the same sense of self. It just gets overshadowed by these habits, fixations, beliefs, thoughts. And that's why, as we come to this subtler perception, we can overlook this self because it hasn't changed. It remains constant. So what has changed is the content. The content has become subtler. We're perceiving at a subtler level. The self is the constant. You are the same you, not the idea of yourself, but the you who is aware is the same now as ever. So this experience, this subtler perception, hopefully you find is more enjoyable, more pleasant than the amped up, stressed out, condensed sense of being someone with problems. Even if a sense of a problem remains, as it may, at this subtler sense of perception, at the very least, the sense of the problem is looser. There's more of a sense of spaciousness, more of a sense of curiosity rather than reactivity. So this subtler perception is both more enjoyable and it's more powerful, because here we can begin to bring about change at this subtler level, which then spills over into the denser level. But fundamentally, what it is that allows this is the self. Without the self, none of the experience could occur, subtle or gross level. So all of the experience is dependent upon the self. So start to feel yourself, perceive the felt sense of yourself. So if all of the experience is existing within this self or is emanating from the self, then I'll suggest to you that rather than focusing on the experience will be more useful to notice the self and to cultivate a more enriched sense of self rather than an impoverished sense of self. So notice this sense of self. Notice this felt sense of yourself. Notice that this sense of yourself has no boundaries. And notice now the sense of self at an energetic level. So just be aware of that. Just notice energetically. So energetic is it's a less subtle than pure awareness, but it's a more subtle level than the level of objective reality. So as pure awareness, you just are undifferentiated. But at the level of energy, you can start to notice where there is differentiation. Hasn't taken objective form, but you can have a sense of yourself energetically, noticing, does it seem balanced? Does it seem smooth? Or does it seem as though there's some imbalance, some lack of smoothness? And just start to experiment with that just through your awareness and notice, are you doing anything at a subtle level that generates or restricts to create that imbalance? Can you release that? You can. So just see how to release that so that you can start to perceive the energy is balanced. It's balanced in all directions, every which way you perceive. It's equal. Allow it to be smooth. And then see if you can recall your intention. And just allow yourself to have a very gentle image of that intention, whatever that intention is. So what will that look like? Get a sense of how it looks and how it feels. And notice this interface between your energetic sense of self and the imaginary sense of self. So there's an interplay between them. So as you imagine, notice the change in the energetic sense of self. Does it become restricted? Are there ways that you hold back? Are there ways that you try to protect yourself? Maybe you're afraid. Maybe you're angry. Maybe you're impatient. Maybe you have self-judgment. And you can notice how that plays out energetically. So again, just allow yourself to, again, allow the energetic sense to be balanced, even, smooth, so that there's equal smooth energy in all directions. You can feel it, sense it. And then When you have that awareness, that sense again, then again, begin to imagine your intention. Imagine how that looks, how that feels. Try to make it a multi-sensorial experience. So whatever that means for you, how it smells, tastes, whatever the case may be. And notice how that is. So if you can really get a good feel for that, a good sense of it, if it feels good, then wonderful. But if you start to pay attention again and notice energetically, is there any restriction, any hesitation? Has that energetic sense changed, or is it still balanced and smooth? If it's again become imbalanced or jagged, or if there's something about the energetic experience that's been shifted in an unpleasant way, then just notice that, and again allow it to become smooth and balanced, so that you just release the restriction, allow yourself just energetically to again have a smooth, balanced sense of energy in all directions. And then one more time, begin to imagine whatever that desire, that intention is. How that looks, how it feels, sounds. And notice if you overlay anything unnecessary. So we're just imagining here, right? So you can notice that in your imagination, anything is possible, right? You could imagine yourself as anything. You could imagine yourself as a blue whale. You could imagine yourself swimming through the ocean. You could imagine yourself uh, as a comet flying through space. See, just all I have to do is say it and you can imagine it. It's very, very easy. So when you're imagining your intention, then this is something you have complete power over. You can choose this. You can imagine anything you want. The limitations, the restrictions are unnecessary. Those are coming from your conditioned mind that say, well, but remember to play it safe, and remember that it doesn't work out usually, and remember that life is hard, and remember all of these reasons why not. But here we're just talking about imagination. It's not about what needs to be in so-called reality. This is limitless. It's just in your imagination. So see how the limitations that come from the conditioned mind, whenever you start to bring this intention into your imagination, see how those limitations come back into the subtler energetic level and produce limitations there. And release those limitations. So again, the energy is smooth and balanced, pure energy. It's just pure energy. There's no limitation here. And this time, one more time, very lightly, just imagine without any limitation. It's just pretend. Just in your imagination, as if you were, just like you were imagining that you're a comet flying through space, or you're a blue whale swimming in the ocean. In that same way, without any limitation, just imagine your intention. Imagine that actually being the case, and allow the energy to remain pure, balanced, smooth. Okay, so in just a moment, I'm going to invite you to slowly open the eyes. Before you do, I want you to one more time become aware of this felt sense, the energetic sense. Let it be smooth, balanced, so you can perceive this pure energy, unbounded in all directions. You can feel it, sense it. And I want you to remain aware of this, even as in just a moment you begin to open the eyes. So the goal here is to remain aware of this unbounded, energetic perception as you slowly open the eyes. So go ahead and slowly begin to open the eyes. So hopefully it's clear that you have, we could say, many levels. At the heart of it, always unchanging, is the pure self. And then there are subtle aspects of yourself, and then there are gross level aspects of yourself. And you maybe can start to see the relationship of all of these aspects of yourself or your experience just through your direct perception. And you can perhaps start to see how, when you get caught up in identifying at the gross objective level, how you have so little leverage there, and how that can be very frustrating, and how you have the skills and the experience to be able to access your subtler dimensions of self, all the way to the very subtlest, pure, undifferentiated awareness. And how simple that is. And the more that you explore that, the more that you say practice that, but just in a very simple way, the more familiar it becomes, the easier it is to access, the easier it is, this is a process of inhibition, right? So you're inhibiting, there's this habit of contraction, habit of contracting in a particular way. And then that seems very solid. And that's what we call me and my life and my problems. And of course, when we're identified strongly at that level, we find it difficult to inhibit because that's who we think we are. Any inhibition is a kind of death. But the more you practice, the more you experience that through this inhibition, you come to discover there's this self that is unchanging. There's this self that is here through all of the states, through all of the experience, through all of it, gross level, subtle level. There's something which is unchanging. So then that identification starts to loosen up, and because you start to realize, well, even when that disappears, I'm still here. So the more practice you have at that, the more familiar it is. The more familiar it is, the less threatening it is. And you just can access it more and more readily. So then what does this have to do with what I suggested earlier at the beginning? That now you have this recognition of, hopefully to a greater degree, of the simplicity of it and the ungraspability of it. This is not something you're ever going to say, I am the supreme master. It's an ongoing process of exploration, but you can keep letting it, just keep exploring it, letting it become simpler and simpler, so that you're learning how to have great facility in inhibition, so that you inhibit all of those habits of contraction at all those levels, and you just start to realize, what is it that's not ever contracted? What is it that's always open and free? And you start to realize, I am that. So, of course, all of these habits still assert themselves. They just keep happening. Less and less, but they're still happening. So it's fine. But now you can start to see that you have this great, we'll call power. It's not like, it's a different kind of power, because it's not like, you can't, the moment you grasp the sword and you say, I have the power, where you're in that contracted, identified state, you've lost the power. But this power of the openness, the power of the self that is always here, it's not grasping anything. That's the greatest power. And you start to recognize that you are that power. So then you can put it into practical application, because like I said, it's great you have this experience of openness or clarity or peace or whatever you want to call it for a few minutes at a time. But now start to apply it, so that in your life, when you're perceiving that you're having a problem, that's like the bell being rung, and that wakes you up, and you realize, oh, yeah, come back to that subtler, and then discover through that you're seeing, oh yeah, I was trying to solve the problem. I was trying to solve this problem of contraction, but the more I tried to solve the problem of contraction, the more contracted. So actually, that whenever I'm trying to solve it, I'm creating it. When I release that, I come to the realization that that problem never was. So you just start to apply that, and the more you apply it, and be willing to fail, because you will. Don't ever think that you've got it, because you don't. That's the thing that will kill it, is if you think I've got it. Then all of a sudden you've got something to defend. Aha, I've got it. Uh-oh, I might lose it. So just keep finding how simple it is, and that nothing can interfere, nothing can be a problem to this. All of those habits of identification will, at subtler and subtler levels, will reveal themselves. Don't dismay. Each time there's a revelation, especially when at the subtler level, it can seem even worse in a lot of ways than when it's at a gross level. At a gross level, it's like, that seems really bad, but then you think, oh, subtler will be better. At a subtler level, it can be devastating. But don't dismay when that happens. You'll feel all kinds of things. You'll experience all kinds of things. All those things keep happening. But just know, that's why I say, like, the value of telling the truth is so important. So you just keep telling the truth. The truth is, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to achieve anything. I don't even know anything. Isn't that the truth? You don't even know anything. So then be like a child and just receive. It's like, oh, I thought I knew something, but now I'm realizing I didn't know. Okay, so just receive that. And the more you receive, the more you'll see how that it will just start to open and unfold. Like your own heart. It's your own heart that just starts to open. And your truth will shine forth. And that's the essence of your real desire is found there. So with the intention and the desire, don't abandon it. Again, you want, like, that is what helps you build the bridge, but don't be rigid with it either. Okay, so let it also unfold. Let it also reveal itself, because it's opening to reveal. It's like a package, and you're opening it. You take off the outer pack. It's like things these days, they come in 10 layers of packaging, So you take the outer packaging, like, oh, what is this? You take that next layer, the next layer. So you just keep doing that. Don't abandon it, but hold it lightly and loosely, so gently, so that, okay, that layer comes off, and it's your heart opening. And as your heart is opening, you're discovering the deeper layers, the deeper truths of that intention. It's bringing you closer in to the heart of it, and that's the bridge. The bridge is to that inner. So just keep following it, and it will take you there. So that's it for the formal portion today. I'm going to end this recording, so be prepared. There will be this loud announcement. Here we go.